Well, I'm out about again in Shropshire exploring another old railway. This time I'm in the south of the county exploring the mining line from Ludlow to Clee Hill and Titterstone Clee.
Well, we'll take a look at the route now on what is a fairly basic map. Got Ludlow down here, so Hereford going south and Shrewsbury going north, and the line takes over a 90-degree turn just north of Ludlow up through Middleton siding and up to Bitterley. At this point we have the split, and this is where the steep inclines start. So we have the standard gauge line up to Clee Hill, which reaches 1 in 6 before reaching a sort of plateau at the top and curves round the back to the quarry. We also have the narrow gauge route up to Titterstone quarries. This more detailed map from 1903 shows the start of the line and that curve. So we have here the line branching off the Ludlow to Shrewsbury line, and it curves right through Fishmore, crossing Fishmore Road, and then faces the direction of Clee Hill. So this is that curve today. Between the gap in the trees we can see the main Shrewsbury to Ludlow railway line, and the Clee Hill branch came up through this bank here, all the way up past that play park, and then in the distance it veered to the right towards Clee Hill. Now at the end of this initial curve of the line we reach the modern day Ludlow bypass. However, to the best of my knowledge, the Clee Hill line pushed out towards Middleton along this embankment. Anyway, after losing the line for a while north of Ludlow, we've now picked it up again here at Middleton, and we can see the remains of the viaduct. Despite it being dismantled, it's actually in pretty good condition. And here on the east side, crossing the stream, it's even better preserved. In fact, we've got the whole archway still standing. Now here at Middleton there was a siding, and I'm looking east here, and it's about 100 yards in front of me on the left hand side. In the book we can see a picture of the sidings in 1961 looking east towards Clee Hill. Well, I've come to the other side of Middleton now, and I'm looking west from the last location. Where that gate is in the distance is roughly where the track came. And if we turn to the east, we can see the path of the railway right up into the distance. And if I zoom in a bit, we can see the path of the railway right up in the distance, working its way up to Clee Hill. And on this beautiful late winter's day we've got a fantastic view of Clee Hill. Well, this long piece of straight track which we can see here now moves up towards Bitterley, which is our next destination. Well, I'll come about a mile up the track and then we're just coming into Bitterley. The line here is actually quite prominent because it's on a raised embankment as it comes near to Bitterley. Hence another viaduct which is half preserved here. Well, on the east side the viaduct is gone, but the embankment is still evident. And just a little bit further along we've got another standing viaduct, the second one I've found on the line so far. Well, I've reached an important part of the line now, and this is at Bitterley Court. This is just to the east of Bitterley, and here we've got the split of the lines. To the right hand side we can see the steep incline going up towards Clee Hill, and to the left we have some sidings and also the route up Titterstone Clee. The steep incline to the right is activated by a pulley system to aid the trains on the journey up into the Clee Hill. And we can see the pulley system here from this picture in 1950. The book also has a picture of the junction closer up. Unfortunately we can't see too much from that same bridge today because this is the scene now, very, very overgrown. Well, this is the track coming up to Bitterley Court from Bitterley. So if we go back to the picture in the book, that's the scene in 1955. I'm afraid now it's very, very overgrown. But I'm going to have a look round the other side and see if there's any trace of the track going up the hill. Well, I'll come a little bit south of the bridge, and if I look up towards Clee Hill, you can see about halfway up the pathway of the railway as it goes up the steep incline right up to the quarries. Well, as I zoom in, you can see a fence about halfway up, and that's the incline of the railway.
Well, I've come halfway up the incline to Titterstone, and you can see what the scene is today. There's about 1 in 6 gradient in places, which is incredibly steep. Go to the picture in the book, we can see it a little bit further down, but we can see the steepness of the incline going into the valley. Now if we look back in the book and look at the east side, we can see the rails going up to the steam shed at the top there. And this is the scene today. Now this incline at 172 yards was regarded as the longest of its kind at that time. That is for standard gauge. And the 2 tracks you can see to the right were to catch runaway wagons. So from this point the track curved to the right and was a much shallower gradient, went through the village of Clee Hill and round the back of the hill to the quarries. Well, from here I'm going to take a slight detour over to Titterstone Clee, which we can see in the distance, and we can see from this side that it's been heavily mined. Now here I am at the top of a very windy Titterstone Clee. Well, coming up here on the hill, you can certainly capture the extent of the mining that was done up here, just looking around at the extensive buildings. There are some significant building remains up here. Now I'm not entirely sure, but the remains of these buildings rather suggest that this might be where the winding equipment was to pull up the wagons from the steep incline from Bitterley Court. The mining of stone here was big business. Much of it was done for road building, of course. But it's only when you get up here you really appreciate the full extent of how big the mining industry was up here. Now the old railway line worked its way down the valley into the distance, as we can see. I don't have an old picture to show you, of course, but it worked its way down the valley directly in front of me. The Clee Hill line here was actually built in 2 sections. The first section from Ludlow to Bitterley was opened in 1861 with about a 1 in 20 gradient, which in itself was quite testing for the trains. The second phase opened in 1864. This brought the incline up to 1 in 6, which is incredibly steep, and in fact the line rose 600 feet in just 1 3/4 miles, and this included a passing loop up towards Clee Hill. Both the standard gauge up to Clee Hill and the narrow gauge to Titterstone Clee required a steam engine to help it haul up, which was based at the top of the hill. Now the lines up here tested the drivers out a bit. They were difficult enough as it was, but wet weather made it even increasingly more difficult. Trains were well known to slide in wet weather, and it certainly got the best out of the drivers, and the most experienced drivers were the ones that used to do this route most regularly. Let's have another look at the map, and I'm now going to move from Titterstone across back to Clee Hill and to Clee Hill top, which is the top of the incline. At this point the track levels out and curves round, goes through Clee Hill itself, round the back and up to the quarries. Now I'm on that stretch now as we go through the village of Clee Hill, and as it curves to the left we can see that the gradient is fairly small. In fact, if anything, it's fairly flat here. And beautifully preserved one of the signals. Now we've come to the top end of the curve as we're starting to come out of Clee Hill and start to go round the side of the hill itself to the quarry. Now just in front of us here somewhere was the crushing plant. I'm not quite sure where the crushing building was, but I think it was roughly where that building is in the distance. I'm pretty certain there's nothing left of it though. Well, the stone crushing plant is somewhere around here. This part of the line now though is vacated by the quite famous Clee Hill Plant Hire Company, who quite coincidentally do lots of work on the roads. Here on the east side of the Clee Hill plant, the line carried on from roughly where that building is, across there, and the road in the distance going to the left, and the quarries are just to my left up on the hill. Well, here I am. I've arrived at Clee Hill Quarry, and quite a dramatic scene it is as well. This is the effect of 100 years or so mining, and the effect it has on the landscape. So since 1864 this rock has been really crucial and important in the building trade, particularly with road building. But if we look in the distance, as I zoom in, we can see that the quarrying still continues today. Well, if we look at the rocks itself, it was mainly limestone that they mined here, which was perfect for the road building, but also for other building projects as well. There were some other rocks that they looked for. There was some ironstone and clays, and these were also important in terms of raw materials. Well, this area of the Clee Hills is certainly another beautiful part of Shropshire, but fairly bleak. But you have to take your hats off to the people who worked these lines and worked these quarries back in the 1800s. From the opening of the mines in the 1860s right up to the end of the First World War, business was booming. But after the First World War, the demand for stone from these quarries declined, and that decline was gradual, and the inevitable closure came in 1962. The one thing that's been great to find today is all the history is still here. All the mine shafts and the remains of the buildings are still standing, and you can really feel what it was like to be working up here in the middle of winter back in the 1860s. If you want to learn more about this railway line and other railway lines in Shropshire, please go to my website, which is www.shropshirerailways.co.uk.